In the summer of 1971, humanity was still looking at the moon, wondering what it would be like to touch the stars. We didn't realize that the stars had already touched back. It arrived in Geneva without a footprint, a shape made of sharp angles and impossible geometry, as if it had been folded out of the dark matter between galaxies. It didn't belong to the road. It didn't belong to the era. Marcello Gandini hadn't designed a car. He had channeled a transmission from a distant sun. It was low, it was silent, and it looked like it was waiting for us to catch up. Legend says that when a worker at the Bertoni design house first saw the prototype, he didn't speak in technical terms. He didn't talk about aerodynamics or engines. He uttered a single word in a local Piedmontese dialect: Countach. It wasn't a name. It was an exclamation of shock. A word used when you see something so beautiful or so terrifying that your vocabulary fails you. In 1971, the world was still recovering from the moon landing. People were looking at the stars, wondering what was out there. And then, at the Geneva Motor Show, Lamborghini showed them. It was low, it was wide, and it looked like it was made of triangles and glass. It didn't look like a car. It looked like the future had arrived early, and it wasn't here to be friendly. The man behind the pen was Marcello Gandini. He had already designed the Miura, the most beautiful car in the world. But Gandini wasn't interested in repeating himself. He wanted to kill the curve. He embraced the Wedge. He wanted a car that looked like it was piercing the air, a machine that could slice through reality itself. The Countach was the ultimate expression of that obsession. Everything about it was a middle finger to tradition. The doors didn't swing out, they rotated toward the sky. The iconic scissor doors. They weren't just for show. The car was so wide and the sills were so thick that in a tight parking spot, this was the only way to get out. It was a solution born of madness. The car was officially the LP400, Longitudinale Posteriore. Unlike the Miura before it, the engine was mounted front to back, the gearbox sat between the seats, and the power was sent back through the sump to the rear wheels. It was an engineering puzzle designed to centralize the weight, to make this spaceship handle like a weapon. The early cars, the Periscopica, were pure. No wings, no flared arches, just a clean silver or red dot. When you stepped on the throttle, you weren't just accelerating, you were commanding 4 liters of Italian fury to scream inches behind your head. There was no soundproofing, there was no luxury, there was only the heat of the engine and the smell of high-octane fuel. But the Countach wasn't a car you drove. It was a car you wrestled. To see behind you, you had to open the door, sit on the sill, and look backward while moving. The clutch felt like it was made of lead. The steering was heavy enough to tire a professional athlete. The cabin was a greenhouse that trapped the Italian sun, turning the interior into an oven. It was flawed. It was difficult. At high speeds, the front end would get light as if it actually wanted to take off and return to the stars. And yet, that was the point. The Countach was the first supercar that required a price beyond money. It required your physical effort. It required your respect. It was a car that didn't care if you were comfortable. It only cared that you were brave. As the 70s turned into the 80s, the Countach evolved. It grew wings. It grew flared wheel arches. It became the face of the poster era. Every child of the 80s had this car on their wall. It represented the peak of excess. It was the car of the dreamers, the rebels, and the people who wanted the world to stop and stare. It became a cultural icon, a symbol of a time when we weren't afraid to be loud. But beneath the wings and the plastic, the soul remained the same. It was still that wedge. It was still that exclamation of shock. It remained the gold standard for cool. For nearly 20 years, no other car in history has stayed at the top of the mountain for that long. So how do you remember the Countach? We remember it as the car that changed the rules of what a car could be. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a boundary. It was the car that proved that speed is nothing without theater. It taught us that we don't just want to get from point A to point B. We want to feel like we're traveling through time. The Countach is the reason we look at supercars today and expect them to be wild. It set the bar so high that we are still trying to reach it. It was the space traveler that decided to stay on Earth, just to show us what we were missing. It was born from a word of shock, and 50 years later, we are still trying to catch our breath.